Hello, everybody. We have finally made it to the finale of this countdown of the top 100 albums of the 21st century. And today, of course, as always, is joining me, John Stanek from Johnny Radio here, but also a very special guest here, of course, Trey Holmes from Reactions to the Classics, an amazing YouTube channel. And what a great guy to talk music with. Man, we are so glad to have you here.
Man, I'm so excited to be here, man. It's been so fun not only submitting my list for this and following along as y'all counted down, but to now be included in the final video. We made it, gentlemen. Top five here, and I'm really excited to count this down with y'all, man. And I know we were talking off camera. I was a fan of John's channel before we started up reactions to the classics back in
Wow.
December of 2018. I can't believe it's almost been 5 years. You know,
Yeah.
cue David Bowie, 5 years. But
5 years, yeah.
yeah, man, and I've known Nathaniel for a little bit as well, and connected with him, and so he reached out to me for a couple of the previous countdowns y'all had, and just couldn't make it work, but made this one work, and I'm so excited to be here with y'all, man.
Well, the timing is perfect on this one, man. I'm so glad we got it to work out. And yeah, as you know, we're big fans of reactions to the classics as well. The solo videos, and of course, when you and your dad are together, it's magical, man. It's such a beautiful thing to see. And just your overall knowledge of music, man. It's such a pleasure to watch. So thank you so much for doing this, dude.
Yes, I mean, thank
Oh,
you
yeah.
once again. I mean, and honestly, if you guys haven't checked this out, the knowledge, the detail that these guys put in their videos, the whole Holmes family there, it's just awesome. You got to check these guys
Check the
out.
link. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely amazing channel. But the time has finally come for us to unveil the top 5 albums of the top 100 albums of the 21st century, and to kick things off, we're going to take it to number 5.
Pull up,
Frank,
headshot,
Frank,
sit down.
Frank.
Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar from 2012. Of course, the third appearance of Kendrick Lamar on this list. And it should be no surprise that this album makes it this high on the list. This was in my top 20. I didn't quite have it this high, but this is a game-changing album, especially when it came out in 2012. I don't think hip-hop had really seen the likes of something this conceptual, of something this story-driven. As it said, a short film by Kendrick Lamar. It essentially is such a cinematic narrative in so many ways, and almost like kind of, non-chronological. Like, it follows a very linear narrative, but like the way they jump between it is very artistically done, similar to something like, the French New Wave. And I absolutely love what Kendrick is talking about on here throughout this whole thing. But the first time I heard it, I was a bit put off at first, because you hear like backseat freestyle, bitch don't kill my vibe. It's like, oh, is this going to be another super braggadocious rap album? But then you realize, as the story goes along, why those songs were there and under what context they were happening. Him putting on this front for these guys, he's trying to impress these bad influences. He's the good kid in the Mad City, and you get to see everything. Him falling to temptations of the hood, and everything that goes along with it, and all the tragic tales that go along with it. I mean, there's some really amazing songs in here, like Poetic Justice, like the 2 title tracks on here. Swimming Pool Drank is really a very, very introspective track. But to me, 2 of the best songs on here are Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst, which I think is one of the most harrowing tales Kendrick has ever chronicled in his entire discography, as well as Real. This great moment of self-realization throughout his journey, learning what it is to be a man in this area. And then, of course, Compton with Dr. Dre, the legendary Dr. Dre, is such a triumphant way to end such a personal journey of self-respect. I mean, this really is one of the most moving albums I've ever heard. It's definitely a top 100 all-time classic for me. I think this album is amazing, and quite frankly, I'm really glad to see it this high on the list.
Well, you know my take on Kendrick,
Come on, man.
but that being said, this won't sound like a lot coming from me, but this is actually my favorite Kendrick album. For all the reasons you mentioned, but yeah, I mean, I think musically, this might be out of all the ones that I've heard, the most fun. And
Mhm.
swimming pools definitely fits that whole vibe. I love Compton with Dr. Dre, and really anything involving Dr. Dre for that matter. I mean, maybe not some of the Eminem stuff, but yeah, I'm gonna try to not sound too much like a negative old man on this episode because it
But
is the
maybe
top
you
five.
will.
But I'll say this, I don't think it deserves to be this high, but I'm not mad about it. So I know Trey's gonna have a lot more to say than I do about this.
No, man, y'all summed it up well, dude. And what a way for me to join in because it's so tough when you're talking like your favorite of all time, this or that. I will say I've probably listened to Good Kid, Mad City more than any other album ever actually because this
Wow.
came at a very crucial. I was a junior in high school when this album dropped, and so
Mm.
there were some of my classmates kind of like turn my attention to Kendrick. I was kind of a growing hip hop head, listening to like Biggie and Pac and Nas, and so
Of course.
Kendrick was kind of the first guy though who was of my generation that I was like, oh man, this dude, he's special. So Swimming Pools Drain came out and ironically kind of became a party anthem, even if if you read the lyrics, it is not like condoning
Yeah.
the drinking and whatnot. Kind of have a Born in the USA situation right there from the boss,
Right.
but everything about it, man, just kind of that coming of age, as you said, Nathaniel. So such a cinematic record. I think that's a great way to put it. The skits in here are really well done. Sometimes that can definitely be hit or miss
Dude,
in the hip hop world, but
dude, I
I,
gotta interject for a second. The one about the
yeah,
dominoes kills me every time.
yeah.
That is great.
Well, me and my dad Sean reviewed this for the channel years ago, and he'd never heard it, and I was already familiar with it, and he told me the same thing the first time he listened to it. He's like, "Man, that skit just had me dying laughing
Yeah.
over there." And but
Yeah.
and that's the great thing I think about the record too is and again kind of going back to that cinematic piece, right? You have moments where there is some comedy, where it's that braggadocious nature where he's trying to put on this front, right? And then you have really emotional, impactful moments on here as well, as you alluded to on "Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst," where we have the Maya Angelou skit in the middle, where these guys, their friend had just got shot and killed, and they're thinking of getting revenge, and then she pulls up and says the sinner's prayer with them, and then you finish off the record, yeah, with that triumphant nature with Compton, and it kind of ends in a loop because he says, "Hey, mom, I'm gonna be back in 15 minutes with the band," and then the tape recorder stops, and that's kind of how the album opens too. So, man, I just love this album. I think it's one that if anyone's going to point to a Kendrick record that's maybe more just like a casual, fan of hip hop, it's going to be this one. It's never left the Billboard Top 200 in its
Wow.
10 years since it's been released. So I think it has that staying power with, as time has gone on, and it is a modern day classic in my opinion. And yeah, man, I love Kendrick, and I love that this came in so high on the list.
Yeah,
So it was
I
pretty
can.
high on your list, then, I take it.
Yeah.
Dude, I had it at number two,
Wow.
Wow.
two
Wow.
or three.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you must be
so
happy about this placement then.
I'm very happy, dude. Yeah,
Nice.
and so I even got I saw Kendrick last year, man. I got
Uh-oh.
my
Blurring
blurred
it.
background and whatnot, but
Yeah.
I know you're both not incredibly high on Mr. Morale. Maybe it's because I am a therapist, and that really kind of connected with me
Yeah.
going through like therapy stuff. But I do love man, I do love Kendrick and everything he's released. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool that the people felt the same way to get him at the 5 spot.
It
Absolutely,
is a
man.
democracy after all. So
Yes, it is. I agree with Trey 100% here about Kendrick. This really is such a seminal album and a modern day classic. I mean, what else can you say about it? But yeah, guys, another amazing choice in the top 10. And that now is going to take us to number 4.
My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West from 2010. Kanye does it again, and I believe he may be the artist with the most albums at this point on the list overall. And hey, I mean, this definitely, in my opinion, is his best. I mean, this, you could look at it and say like, man, this album's all over the place, but in a good way. I mean, just starting with Dark Fantasy, that can we get much higher? It puts you in that state like something great is about to happen. And sure enough, man, like the whole way through, this thing is great. But I mean, hits like Power, which may be my favorite Kanye song. Mm-hmm. It's just incredible on so many levels. I mean, you know, he's taking King Crimson and I would say maybe elevating it because I mean, that song is amazing in itself, 21st Century Schizoid Man, but he's taking it to this other level, and those background vocals, the beats. Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember when this came out, man, and this is just one of those songs I still to this day like just turn this up in the car with the bass way up and like feel like I'm, you know, on top of the world, even though of course the message, like we were just talking about with Kendrick with swimming pools, is a little bit anti, obviously, and kind of trying to fight himself on the song, which is interesting, you know, with everything that he's gone through since then. But man, I mean, just Runaway. I mean, what an incredible song, hip hop or not. I mean, such a simple piano riff, but one that like as soon as you hear it, that melody will get stuck in your head for days. What he does with the vocoder at the end of that track feels like, you know, he's elevating that style of music. So Appalled is a song that I think is just very underrated, but I mean, you got Jay-Z as just one of like 5 other amazing hip hop people on that track. And it's, you know, I just love that repeating chorus, one hand in the air. If you don't really care. Yeah, it's brilliant, man. And then of course you got hits like All of the Lights and Monster. Hell of a Life is a hell of a banger as well. I mean, every single song on here. And I just love the way this album ties up with Who Will Survive in America. Which is just like, you know, it's thought provoking. It makes you want to groove. It makes you want to just like, you know, it puts you in a dark state of mind at times. It's just, I think if for those who write off Kanye not as a genius, you know, and genius is a strong word, especially when you're calling yourself that. But this album kind of, you know, at least I don't want to say like proves that, but it's you know, it deserves its spot on this list. I'll say that. So I'm pretty psyched.
I think it does, honestly. I mean, this, as I said, Late Registration I think is his best and my favorite, but like this is the one that everybody collectively says is the best, and it's definitely still easily my second favorite Kanye album, and I think one of the greatest albums of all time. I mean, what can you say about this album? Really, I will say I don't quite love it as much as everyone else, because it's not like a top 50 album for me or anything, but it certainly was, I'd say, right outside of my top 10 on this list that I made, but I can't deny it being in the top 10 just from a cultural standpoint. I mean, this album is so iconic, especially Power. You know, and there's so many great bars in that as well that are just so humorous. Like, they say I'm the abomination of Obama's nation. That's a pretty bad way to start a conversation. It's just like the way he kind of indulges his ego on this one never feels like it's coming off in a very kind of way where I'm not really like because he really explores in a very interesting way, and I think you get those amazing songs like Monster, which, my goodness, I mean, so many great features, of course, from Rick Ross and Jay-Z on there, but Nicki Minaj completely runs away with that verse, no pun intended. I absolutely love that song. Just the vocals, of course, from Bon Iver, like it's just absolutely amazing. Yeah, of course. I mean, you gotta love Hell of a Life, even though, you know, they sampled Iron Man, but I think it's a great way, you know, and yet again, like, you see him really like indulging himself, you know, like how does it, I think I just got married to a porn star or whatever, you know, like, and you just see him really indulge in all his, you know, twisted fantasies, so called. But of course, I mean, Runaway, you could make the argument for that being Kanye's best song. I think it's probably one of the greatest songs of all time. And like you said at the end, like when he like auto-tunes his voice, it, like, I heard someone say this one time, a big Kanye fan was saying, like, he did that to kind of obscure his voice, because you can't understand what he's saying and he can't get across clearly what he's trying to say, which I think, considering everything we've seen with Kanye since, is really kind of the most unique a way of expressing himself, in very sad way of expressing himself, but really the way I think that it really is the centerpiece of the album, because if it weren't for that, like, it would just be all these kind of, not, I wouldn't say empty songs, but you really like, he really understands, you know, Baby I Got a Plan, Run as Fast as You Can, like, and it just seeing how that's manifested itself in his relationships, of course, with his last marriage. I mean, it's just so sad to see, you know, something so genius to be so prophetic in so many ways. But also, I gotta mention Blame Game featuring John Legend. I think that's one of Kanye's best songs as well. And yet again, the lyricism across this whole album, I think, is really what puts it forward as well. And of course, a amazing feature from Chris Rock. Of all people,
Yeah.
just showing how it's so.
Me.
Yeah, exactly. It's so unexpected, but, you know, such a pleasant surprise.
Oh, and Elton John makes an appearance on the album as
Oh,
well.
yeah, on
piano.
All the Lights, yeah,
Right,
and
right.
and it's just amazing, and backing vocals as well. I mean, you could go on and on about how iconic this album is in so many ways, and as much he is indulging his ego, like I said, there's still those moments of self-critique and social critiques, like the end of Who Will Survive in America. I mean, I have to say, from a production standpoint, this is one of the best produced albums of all time. And I think right up there with Late Registration is one of the best produced albums in his discography and in general. Yeah, I think, as I said, I had this album lower, but there's no denying that this probably should be in the top 5. And glad to see Kanye on here for the 6th time. To say what you will about what he's become, but his impact is probably is just so undeniable. I think more so than any of these artists who have made this list in the 21st century specifically. I mean, you can't beat him.
Yeah. No, man, y'all summed it up really well. I love this album, and it's tough for me because I don't have like a definitive number one Kanye record, even though I'd say, and you know, this is tough with all that has been going on. I'd say Kanye's probably my favorite artist of all time.
Wow.
Him, Kendrick, the Beatles, you know, Radiohead. Those are kind of my Mount Rushmore, I'd say. But yeah, dude, I think the word that always comes to mind when listening to this is it's a maximalist record from
Yes.
From the production, just, you know, constantly very bombastic, in your face, or you know, even the times where it gets almost like a little rap opera-y, and that All the Lights interlude, and then boom, we hit the actual song, All of the Lights. I mean, that's one that's played, you know, obviously to this day. And I'm a big fan of Gorgeous as well. I think Raekwon popping in there for a verse at the end. Always love him when the Wu-Tang gets a little love in there. And you know, another great hit with him and Cudi. You know, I know y'all talked about Hitsy Ghost as well, but yeah, dude, I think you know, if I had to pick one artist to say, you know, who is the artist of the 21st century, I mean, I think whenever you look at quality of music, impact, even the controversy in there, everything. Like, I think Kanye would be my pick. And oh, shoot, he had what, three of the top 10 albums in
Yeah.
this list, right?
No one
With
else had
college,
that many.
yeah, with
Yeah.
College Dropout, Late Registration, and this. And so, who knows what the future holds for him for the rest of this century, right? But his body of work is incredible to me. And I think this album, if I had to choose one, I guess I am picking My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but either that or the College Dropout for me. But yeah, dude, what and I love what John was saying too about Power. There's something about that song when you're cruising around, bumping it as loud as you can. You feel like you can run through a wall, do anything, even if it might come crashing down. And I think that's another thing with the record too, right? This came right off the Taylor Swift incident. His reputation was so low. Exile to Hawaii kind of got some inspiration there, and was like, I got to come out and make a banger of an album. And he delivered on that quite a turn from 808s and Heartbreak, his previous record. And so that's the thing too. I like with Kanye, always. Especially earlier in his career, right? Kind of shifting from expectations or maybe a box people try to put him in. And so, yeah, man, loved that it came top 5 on the list, man. Going from Kendrick to Kanye here. I already like
2 cinematic albums in a row, I would say.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, as maximalist as I don't get the sense of like, story is vividly something like that, but I will say I am glad to see it above Good Kid, Mad City at the very least. Not that there's much of a degree of quality difference if you ask me, but yeah, I agree with you, Trey. I mean, really, I don't think there's any artist who has had more of an impact than Kanye. And some people are like, what are you talking? I'm like, look at it. Look at how music has progressed for better, for worse. I mean, there's no denying his stamp on literally everything as a producer, as a rapper, as a songwriter. I mean, there's no denying Kanye is at the absolute top. And yeah, I mean, he's not my number one, but like he's up there for me. Like I definitely would agree with you that he is one of the all-time greats. Definitely top 5 solo artists for me of all time. Say what you will about the man, but what he did at the peak of his career, I think is incredible, and I think it all culminated into this amazing record. So really another amazing choice, of course, once again. So yeah, guys, that now is going to take us to number 3.
Kid A by Radiohead from 2000. I mean, come on, man. This is absolutely another band with some of the most albums on this list, rightfully so. And yeah, this continues to be a classic. I remember it being on many top, at the top of many lists for at least a decade, and still to this day, has a lot of love. For me personally, I would say this might be like my 4th favorite Radiohead album overall, but of the 2000s, for sure, it's up there. I mean, it's just, there was nothing like it when it came out. And I'll be the first to admit, like, when it came out, everybody was wanting like to see what their follow-up would be to OK Computer. And I didn't really get it at first. I was like, okay, they're going a completely different direction. And it took a while for some of these tracks to really grow on me. And I think it was when I saw them perform on SNL shortly after the album came out, because it was leaked back in those days on LimeWire before it came out. A lot of people listened to it a little early, but when they played the national anthem and Idiotech on SNL, and I saw Tom York's performance and how into it he was, I was like, okay, I get it now. This is like, they're on some next level stuff here. And I mean, those 2 songs are probably my favorites, although Everything in Its Right Place, I mean, such an amazing opener. The way they're looping Tom's voice. And I mean, like I said, there's nothing like it, even though it was written on a piano, but you couldn't tell, because it's like all these, they went away from, analog acoustic instruments and into this electronic field. And that, and the title track especially, is like what in the world is this? But How to Disappear Completely, I think that's the first track on the album that actually has a guitar on it. And just one of the most beautiful ballads they ever wrote, and just so despondent, the way Tom is just singing about really that it was written on the tour of them just touring the world off of OK Computer, and him feeling just like he wanted to disappear. And it's just brutally sad, but it's an amazing track. I mean, every song on here has something to offer, even tracks like Tree Fingers, which is just more an interlude, but if you're just like chilling and listening to it, there's something beautiful and hypnotic about it. But yeah, then you got rockers like Optimistic, as I mentioned, Idiotech, just amazing. I mean, the whole Ice Age coming, Ice Age coming,
this is really happening.
Brilliant, man. I mean, what else can I say that I haven't said about Radiohead before? But yeah, I mean, I totally understand why people connect and love this album so much, and there probably never will be anything quite like it. But yeah, I wasn't surprised to see it this high, and I'm glad that it is. So
yeah, man. I mean, look, to say that this is my least favorite album of this episode really doesn't say too much. I mean, because this is yet again another one of the greatest albums of all time, an all-time classic if you ask me. But let me tell you a story first. So I remember the first time I sat down and listened to Kid A, I was like confused, like Tom York saying, "I woke up sucking on a lemon." I'm like, what is going on? But I knew, like, I didn't. This doesn't usually happen with albums. Usually I'm like, I have an idea how much I like it, and then I just grow to appreciate it. But I didn't really feel like I liked this album the first time I heard it. But I'm like, I know there's something here. Let me just, try to find out what it is. And I was very caffeinated, and I had a whole ass soda. So I was literally up till like 4 a.m. in the morning. I listened to Kid A again, and then I listened to OK Computer again, and then I listened to Kid A again, and then I woke up again, I think, and listened to it, and I was like having an existential crisis almost listening to it, like in the wee hours of the morning, you could say. And
you were in limbo, Nathaniel.
Well, maybe I was. Radiohead limbo, but yeah, I mean, I realized. So when I did this, I did write down some stuff because I think as much as this album amazes me, because this was the band on the verge of breaking up. And then somehow they were able to come together with Tom York's really chopped up lyrics, got behind the computer and started making all these unique sounds. Because I think, honestly, maybe out of all the albums on this episode, this sonically is probably the most influential. I really think this changed because if you're going to put Kanye at the top of the most influential artists, or as the most influential artist of the 21st century, I think Radiohead has to come in second. Like, I really don't think there's anyone who was better.
I don't think there's that, honestly, but yeah.
Well, I know you, but I'm just saying, like, from a cultural standpoint, I think like they have to be, like, it has to be in that order. And I agree with you. I mean, Radiohead's one of my top 10 favorite bands of all time, but I think there is a clear kind of theme going on throughout this album, because obviously Tom York was at a very low state in his life, but the cut up technique they use for the lyrics here, even though they say there's no meaning to it, like, if you look at everything in its right place, it's about confusion and depression, two sides of one outcome. The title track's about conformity and depression. The national anthem is really kind of talking about a nation full of loneliness, disconnect, and fear. How to Disappear Completely is about disillusionment and fame, or disillusionment with fame. Which obviously the whole band was experiencing at that time after the massive success of OK Computer. And I think that's why this album was made, for them to really reinvent themselves in that way. Optimistic, I think, is about, best effort is really worth more than giving into inevitability. Now, I will say, Tree Fingers, I know you said you liked it. Let's be honest, that doesn't mean anything. You could throw that off the album. It wouldn't change a thing. It would actually make it a little bit better, if you ask me. But I think the transition between Optimistic and In Limbo is really what connects the two songs. It's a transition. What do you expect? But I think that song's really delving into, like his own private world, sort of thing. And then Idiotech is obviously about avoiding impending doom, and I think one of the first real great political statements from Radiohead as a band. And I think I'm talking about global warming, and we've seen how that's kind of manifested into their music, like on albums like A Moon-Shaped Pool and whatnot. And then Morning Bell, of course, is one of the saddest songs I've ever heard, about divorce like that. Cut the kids in half. I mean, it's just like, it's just so disturbing but so beautiful at the same time. And then to end it off on Motion Picture Soundtrack with those ethereal harps, and I mean, sonically, that is my favorite song on the album, and it really is the aftermath of all this chaos going on. And I think, as you can see, there really is a clear line drawn throughout this entire album that I think is inherently amazing for something that just kind of like was thrown out into the ether. I mean, this album really changed everything in electronic music. Talk about a band reinventing themselves. And I will say, though, OK Computer, I think, has the better songs overall. I do think that this is a better album than OK Computer, because I just think the production on this is astounding, just from top to bottom. And this isn't even my favorite Radiohead album, so what does that tell you? And it's still one of the best of all time. So I had this in my top 20. I can't complain about it being at number 3. It's a classic record, and from one of the best bands of all time. What can you ask for?
No, 100%, man. I'll just start off by saying I think we need to start a petition to have Radiohead's the national anthem become our United States national anthem right here, man. I'd be down for that.
That would be
They're
awesome.
British.
Yeah. That's right. It would really throw a wrench. Hey, man.
Yeah.
But
And have the horn players play it exactly the same every time somehow.
Chaos.
Man.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, I think I think both of y'all kind of hit the nail on the head right here. This I'd probably number 4 or 5 on my Radiohead album rankings, and here it is coming in top 3 on this entire list, right? Because as you said, Nathaniel, so I mean, you gotta admit it took a lot of cojones for Radiohead to do this, right? Often cited as one of, if not the biggest, switches or left turns in music history, right? Coming off of OK Computer, and I always respect when artists do that, and not to say that you always have to do that, right? But whenever you go out and try, and you're an incredible rock band, but then you drop, this and say, you know what, we're also an incredible electronic band, and that's obviously continued to bear fruit, throughout. Even some of the stuff with the Smile recently, right, with Johnny and Tom, and so I do really enjoy how like really emotive Tom York's voice can get at certain points in this record. How to Disappear Completely, and then I think Motion Picture Soundtrack is my favorite song on here as well, and it ends on such a melancholic note, though, right? Like, I think you're crazy, maybe I think you're crazy, and then the last line we hear on the album, I will see you in the next life. It's man, it really does kind of punch you in the gut right there. And so I think the production here, the experimentation, shout out to we haven't mentioned him yet, but Nigel Godrich, on producing it. Like, he is the George Martin of our time, right? Really helps.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah,
really has helped, I think, elevate Radiohead to kind of fulfill some of their visions that they've had, of course, throughout their career, man. So of the albums on this episode, this is the one I revisit least, and yet I see why it's here, man. It is a stone cold classic. It's an album that I can only imagine. That's why I was glad to hear you talk about it, John, being a fan of the band for so long, right? And then this drops. I can only imagine, very polarizing, right? You read that in the retrospective reviews from that came out at that time, right? Some critics, saw the genius of it right away. Others couldn't stand it, and it might have taken a little longer to grow, man. But great pick here from the community for sure.
Absolutely. Like we all said, it's an undeniable classic and a staple in Radiohead's discography, and just music in general. You know, gotta love this album. Takes a bit of time to appreciate it, but I think what they did here artistically was just a giant achievement in music. So another amazing album in this countdown, and that will take us to number 2. In Rainbows, once again, by Radiohead from 2007. And if what you ask me, I think is their greatest achievement. I think this is one of the greatest albums of all time. In one of my favorite so far on this top 5. And look, I mean, what can you say about this album? I really think that this is the bridging point between their, you know, guitar-oriented rock stuff like OK Computer and the electronic music that they were exploring on Kid A and Amnesiac, and it comes together in such a beautifully relatable way. Like, this album, like, when I first heard this, I felt personally attacked. Like, I felt like it was like talking to me, and I just felt kind of like bummed. But not really bummed, because I was just basking in the glow of this amazing sonic achievement, this amazing lyrical achievement. Right from the beginning 15 step, which is just so propulsive, and it just draws you into the album right away, of course, with the weird time signature, as always with Radiohead, and of course Body Snatchers. I mean, literally, there's not a single weak song on this album. I would say, more than anything, I think Faust Arp is like, I really like it. I don't love it, but it's a really good song. And for that to be the weakest song on this album, I don't know what to tell you. That's a pretty amazing record. But I think some real highlights for me, Nude, especially when Tom York comes, maybe his greatest vocal performance of all time. It's kind of hard to argue, but he's like, don't get any big ideas, they're not going to happen. It's like, geez, what a way to kick off the song. But it's such an existential album, I think, even more so than Kid A. I think maybe even a little bit more so than OK Computer, and just what he's exploring on that song is amazing. But as I said, like, and especially the way he tailors off in his falsetto at the end, it's just so mind-blowing, and it's so cerebral, it's so laid back, it's ethereal, and it's just everything you can say about that song can be said and more. But of course, my favorite song on here, Weird Fish's Arpeggi, was to me maybe the most heartbreaking and relatable song on this entire album. You know, especially like getting, you know, what's that line where it's like, I'll follow, like, I'd be crazy not to follow you, follow where you lead, their eyes, they turn me. It's just, oh my goodness. And then of course, like, when he's like saying, I hit the bottom and escape, you know, just that kind of like, you feel like you're leading on to something, and then you come crashing down. Sort of similar to, you know, like that song off of OK Computer, right? But my goodness, it's just, from a musical standpoint, it's amazing what they do on here. But you could go on about this whole album. House of Cards is, I think, one of the most interesting, like, absolutely. Is it that one, or Jigsaw Falling Place, which is about the key parties or whatever, the key bowl parties?
House of Cards.
That's what I figured. Yeah. I just wanted to double check. But it's just like such a weird topic matter to be discussing on
Throw
this
your
album.
keys in the bowl, kiss your husband goodnight.
Right. And it's just like, my goodness. But you know, you could say so much about the themes here. And then of course, Videotape. What a way, with Philip Selway just doing some amazing drumming, and then the way they kind of loop it off onto the end, and it just keeps getting faster and faster and faster and faster, and you know, kind of like looking at this last, like, what are we going to show at the pearly gates? You know, what are we going to have to show before God to kind of account for our own life? I just think that this really is the culmination of everything Radiohead did. And I think really absolutely deserving. This was definitely in my top 10 on this list, and I really can't argue it being as high. It's one of the greatest albums of all time, and you could even call it a masterpiece. It really is just amazing from top to bottom.
Yeah, it's hard to argue you saying that it's Radiohead's best album, even though, like, for me, OK Computer is my favorite, but this is certainly in my top 3. And I think you summed it up beautifully when you said, like, this is the culmination of everything, like, where Hail to the Thief was kind of like, for a lot of us fans at the time, it was like coming out of the electronic and merging the two. This is like when they really perfected it. And also, I think they went to another level, like this is Radiohead going sexy on songs like House of
Mm-hmm.
Cards, on All I Need, which is, oh man, a real
Mm-hmm.
highlight to me. Reckoner is my favorite track
Ooh,
on
Mm,
here. I
it's a
mean,
great one.
dude,
I
yeah.
think you could literally like put the and people have said this, like you could put it in a different order even, and it's almost like a greatest hits album. I mean, Body
Mm-hmm.
Snatchers, one of their greatest rock songs, and watching them perform this, I don't know how many times I've watched on YouTube them live in the basement, like
Mm.
playing
Oh
all
yeah.
the songs on this record. Just takes it to another level to see how brilliantly they pull this off in a live setting and don't miss a beat, and just like reinforces what an amazing guitarist Tom is. I mean, they're all brilliant, but Tom and Johnny especially just unbelievable. And
And Ed.
now you got it. I mean, Ed is great, man. He sings
Yeah.
his own name in the background, Ed, on this one. But no, dude, like even my little granddaughter, man, she like gets hypnotized by Reckoner, and so I'm proud of her already for that at the age of 1.5. But I may have created a monster, but yeah, dude, this is like, yeah, absolutely was in my top 5 for my top 100 here, and so yeah, not surprised to see it, and so happy it's this high.
Yeah, man, this was number 3 on my list, so I was stoked that it came in so high too, man. I really do think, and it's such a concise album too, right? 10
Yeah.
songs, around 40 42 minutes, and
Right.
it I just feel the pacing on it and the transitions from the songs are incredible too. It just I mean, the opener and closer, one of the best opener and closers I feel of any album ever, with 15 Step coming in. And man, Videotape is a top probably 5 Radiohead song for
I
me.
could see it.
I love the as John was saying, like you see them perform that and all these songs in the basement. There's a really good Bonnaroo 2006 version of Videotape as well that might be better than the studio version, but
Mm.
it's incredible, man. And just kind of as y'all were saying, just kind of a beautiful blend of the sounds that these guys had created up to this point in their career. And kind of interesting too for the industry, because correct me if I'm wrong, John, I think they released this, at least for a period there, is for like a pay what you want type deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the first ones to really do
Yeah.
that online, and what a cool thing. I mean, like you could literally download it for nothing. It was kind of them fighting back against
Hmm.
people streaming their albums, or I mean releasing their albums before they put them out, and it came to huge success because I think this was they maybe not their best selling album, but they actually ended up making the most money on this album than any
Yeah.
previous.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No,
brilliant.
and I think that's a great point. Because I think this is one of the most influential albums from a business standpoint, and I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up because really, I mean, nobody was doing anything like this, and I know like Bowie. In the late 90s, as much of a trailblazer as he was, tried to do something similar to that effect, or he was one of the first people to use a digitized medium to sell music. But this was really where they kind of broke open the floodgates, and you really got to see that success and and shows how people pay for quality. Like if
Hmm.
they see it, and it was a huge gamble, but really showed like it was a huge success. And I think in some way it really kind of paved the way for streaming, right? Because streaming wasn't really a thing at that
Right.
point, if I'm correct. And I don't know, like yet again another reason why I would put Radiohead right under Kanye as one of the most influential act from the 21st century. Is
Yeah.
decisions like this that really showed how much they valued their customers and how much their customers, most of them, valued them. And
Hmm.
I really think, yeah, just another accolade to throw on top of another already amazing album. And all these things I really think once again culminate to what I think is their best record, and once again, one of the greatest albums of all time. Well, that's it, guys. We have finally concluded the 99 albums on this list, and now we will find out what comes in at number 1.
All's my life I had.
All right, y'all. It is here. Number 1 on the list. Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, a 2015 masterpiece right here, dude. This is a record, man. I know exactly where I was the first time I heard it. It came out at night, and I was about to go to bed because I had to travel like an hour into college for like a 8 a.m. class the next morning. But then I was on Twitter right before bed, and I was like, oh, it dropped. It's here. All right. So I listened to it, and it's a pretty lengthy album. It's about an hour and 18 minutes. And so, but I was just blown away from the first time I heard it. And I was like, oh my goodness, I think he topped Good Kid, Mad City. This is stunning to me, even though I have heard Good Kid, Mad City more, and it's maybe my favorite Kendrick record. I think just as an artistic statement, as a musical statement, To Pimp a Butterfly is Kendrick's best work, and I don't think he's ever going to top it. I just think that just from the opening, that production just hits you on Wesley's Theory. And the thing Kendrick does, I think, so well on this record is fusing not only hip hop, but jazz. There's a lot of jazz influence, a lot of funk influence on this, soul. Really leaning into what has been traditionally founded and put forth from Black artists, right? As that is something that you could say was kind of the theme statement on this record about the Black experience in America at this time. Looking at it currently with racial tensions, with police tensions, to being Kendrick looks at even on the second track, For Free, right, talks about kind of the effects that slavery had, and how a lot of people in the industry kind of lock these entertainers into these contracts, right, and exploit them in a sense. It's kind of looking in a different way. And so Kendrick was really inspired by his trips around Africa before the recording of this, really inspired by seeing a lot of Nelson Mandela places. So I mean, I won't go through everything on this album because I could talk about it at length, but dude, just the production, the lyricism, the way Kendrick is able to manipulate his voice as well, and almost rap from different perspectives, and interspersed throughout this album is a poem as well. I remember you was conflicted, misusing your influence, yes. Right? And as the album unfolds, we get more and more of this poem until it culminates in the final track, Mortal Man, into like a 8 to 10 minutes it's not a skit, but a segment where he is essentially interviewing Tupac. It's from a Tupac interview. Yeah. And dude, the first time I heard that, y'all, that blew my mind. I was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And following on Twitter at the time as I was listening to it, people were just all kind of losing their minds at that, man. And so I just thought I thought that was incredible. That was taken from an interview that Tupac did in like 1994 or something, and just the way, I mean, it is seamless. You would honestly think that Pac would have been in the studio at the same time.
Yeah.
And just ends on such a powerful note, how Pac's kind of saying, oh, it's gonna eat the rich, essentially, right? The hole's going to open up in the ground. Kind of just ends on it's a very serious record here, for sure. There's moments here and there where maybe musically it's a little uplifting, but I think you have his most heartfelt or just like depressive type tune in You. And I think How Much a Dollar Costs has always been one of my favorites as well, where Kendrick's like talking to this, or sees this dude who's homeless.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, why doesn't he go out and work and this and this? And then this dude, comes up and, asks for money, doesn't give it. And it eventually reveals that, he was like Jesus in disguise, right? Like, I am God and you didn't give this to me? You know, how much is
Yeah.
a dollar going to cost? So the wordplay and everything on here, there's so many themes that, you know, I'm still, it's like Blonde on Blonde or, you know, Highway 61 revisited for me in that regard, where I go back to some of these Dylan records, right? And you pick up a line here or something here, even if you've heard it a lot. And I'm the same way with To Pimp a Butterfly here. So it was my number one on my list. So I think it's, you know, I think it's cool that it ended up number one on this list too. And it's one I think that'll just continue to be talked about for years and decades to come.
I mean, what else was it going to be? You know, and I will say, I did not have this at number one, but it was the only album in the top 5 that was actually in my top 5. So I mean, I really think there was no other album I think you know deserves this spot, and this is because as well I think without question, I'm not saying it is the best album of all time, but I think it is the most brilliantly constructed album I've ever heard in my life. Maybe not from a sonic standpoint, but solely from a conceptual standpoint, the way he pieces this album together, especially how he's, you know, like you mentioned, I Remember You was conflicted, and throughout the whole, like, after each song, he continues to add on to the poem, and whatever he ends off is ties into the themes of the next song. It's like,
it's crazy.
It's like, how genius, like, do you have to, like, to come up with something that concise and so, like, so brilliantly crafted. I mean, it's unbelievable, but the production on this thing too is insane, especially right from the beginning. With the Wesley's Theory featuring, you know, the legendary George Clinton and also Thundercat on the bass there. And it's just so funky and so and just what he's talking about, you know, comparing the downfall of the career of Wesley Snipes, and how he's kind of talking about how black men aren't often given the resources or understanding financially to understand how to deal with their money once they get in that situation, and how the government almost uses them. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about that on record before. And then, of course, for free,
and that opens it, dude. That's crazy. That's how I was like, we're in for something on this.
We're in for some shit here, you know. And then, of course, for free, I mean, just the way he's like, this dick ain't free. You walking around like you ain't got a receipt, and it's just like, how is he able to rattle off so many things in such a concise way, and kind of comparing, you know, like what happened, you know, like on the plantations where they would rape slaves, and how you said how that ties into how black men are being controlled today by industry and society and whatnot. And then, of course, King Kunta, I think, is one of the best bangers Kendrick has ever, you know, of course, that hook, bitch, where you when I was walking? Now I run the game, got the whole world talking. King Kunta, Oh, my goodness. It's just amazing. And I didn't realize this until I listened to the song again, but actually, that was really heavily inspired by the Payback from James Brown.
James Brown.
That makes sense.
Because there's like the lines, oh yes you can, oh yes you can, and it's like, or it's just the phrase, you know, rapping with a ghostwriter, what the fuck happened? I mean, he took that right from that song, and I was like, that connection blew my mind, but once I realized it made sense, you know. And then, of course, you know, I'm probably going to go over half this album, but Institutionalized, I think, is one of the most brilliant songs on here, and how he equates, you know, like, his newfound walls of fame, like, you know, being within the walls of this woman, and then relating it to her ex-lover who's in the walls of prison. I mean, it's just mind-blowing, like, these connections he makes. Yeah, and Snoop Dogg just flows so smooth on that track. You know,
a good beat switch on that tune too.
Yeah. Or I was talking about Institutional, but These Walls is really the one that blows my mind in a sense. But You is like one of the most powerful anthems of self-hate. Like, he's almost like crying, breaking down, you know, all the regret that he's felt over the death of his friend. And then All Right, I mean, come on, it's a modern day civil rights anthem. You know, like, we hate Po-Po, wanna shoot us dead in the street fo show. I mean, come on, everyone knows this song, and it's just amazing how this song has taken a new life of its own, you know, considered the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and whatnot. And I do want to say, I remember when I first listened to this album too, because Kendrick is a very special artist to me, because when my friends, like, you know, like they'd be playing just like some random trap music that it just didn't mean anything to me, and I was just like, what is the appeal of this? I'm like, and I thought that was rap, but I knew Kendrick was, like, you know, talking about something, and this obviously was a very uneducated take on hip hop because I didn't know all the greatness that was there. But when I listened to this album, I wasn't. This was before I listened to the Beatles albums, so I wasn't really, you know, I was working. I wasn't really partaking in the way I should, but I came back to it a few years later when I really started getting the music. And a lot of things were going on. You know, George Floyd had just passed away, you know, and so many things. Not to make it political, but I think you kind of have to for this album. And, you know, like, I was, you know, people were arguing me about Black Lives Matter and stuff. And so I sat down and listened to this album that night, and it really was a life-changing album. I mean, this really was my gateway into hip-hop, and then I discovered so many other great artists like Kanye and like, you know, Pac, who obviously, I mean, Mortal Man, I think, is one of the greatest feats in editing ever. Like, the fact that it's like he takes his random interview and it sounds like it was recorded, a conversation recorded between the two of them. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's no denying that this is the best structured album of all time, because the editing, the detail that went into this, it blows. It might not be quite as good, as in my opinion, as Dark Side of the Moon. I certainly know John agrees with me on that. But just I mean, the way this was put together, the way it's yet again another journey of self-discovery from Kendrick as a black man. What is his place in society? How is he using his influence? What does this all mean? The way the powerful conclusion he comes to on this really, I think, proves to be one of the greatest albums of all time. One that was an immediate classic when it came out, always at the top of every single list, and will be, I think, for the end of time. This is undeniable, and influenced the likes of David Bowie even afterwards. I think
this for Black Star, yeah.
Exactly, man. And I think this is undeniably the most influential album on this list, considering it's in its fact it's like almost only 10 years old, and it's created all this momentum and impact over the past 10 years or less. I mean, it's just incredible. I really can't argue anything else being at number one on this list, and yeah, really glad to see it here.
Well, I don't know what else I can add to that, but I will say I definitely don't love it as much as you guys do. The first time I listened to it, I just flat out didn't get it at all. The second time I listened to it, I get it, but I still don't love it. So maybe the third time, because I've literally only listened to this album twice, and maybe with the context that you guys are giving me, maybe I'll start to get on the Kendrick train. You know, I never want to say be closed-minded to anything.
Right.
And I definitely, so I totally understand, especially, you know, culturally, the impact. Musically, I think it's where I still can't find my footing exactly with this album specifically, but I do appreciate all the influences that he had coming into it. And I'm still just not, I definitely like Kendrick as a rapper more than Eminem, I'll say that. But
I agree.
But this is the first countdown that we've done where I'm just kind of like neutral on the number one. Like all the others, I also love 100% the number one. But and we'll get into this more on next week's discussion with our snubs list and all that. But I can't say like I'm fully disappointed, but you know, this list has been an amazing journey. You know, we've heard some things that we really appreciate, and you know, I've been brought to our attention that we love. There's also been kind of an equal amount of things that we despised along the way, but yeah, man, I think you know, I'm just gonna say for the record, for me personally, I'm gonna give this album another shot. So
okay, I'll take that. That was a very measured approach. I respect that. No, but I think I will agree with you in a sense that I think this is the worst list we've done, from consistently from top to bottom. I mean, but then again, I mean, you know, it's so varied in a sense. You know, not everyone's going to agree on everything. I still think it's the worst list that we've done, but still, as you said, it was an amazing journey. Going through all these albums, and I am more than delighted that this is at number one. I think this is really the only choice. I mean, you could have gone in Rainbows, but I don't know. I just think this one is just a little bit of a higher level, you know, for me,
the
but
margin,
also culturally.
like they were only like
It's
2 points off or something
Yeah,
like that.
No, wow.
This might have been the tightest one because I know there was only 8 points between Purple Rain and Thriller in the '80s countdown, but like this shows you
This
these
one
ones
was
at the
very
top.
close. Yeah.
But I couldn't agree more with this, and as much as I disagree with a lot of stuff on this list, I'm really glad that this ended up being the number one choice. So once again, guys, this has just been, whether we agree or not, this has been an incredible journey. I'm just so much work went into this too. I mean, it's going to be nice to.
It is finished. Like,
it's going to be nice
God.
to wind down a little bit, you could say, before maybe we get back together again, and maybe do something else next year. But you know, we'll update you once we get there.
And stay tuned next week for the snubs video too, because that's probably going to be a long conversation. But
maybe not as long as these last two, but even so, there's a lot to get into. And look, Trey, I want to thank you for coming on this episode. We're so glad to have you. You've been a fan of the channel for years, and once again, if you want to plug the channel and let everyone know where they can find you, go right ahead. Be my guest.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate the kind words, fellas. This was really fun to hop on and, you know, talk some of the best albums ever and some of my favorite artists ever too. So I was like, yeah, sign me up any day of the week right here. And you know, I just love the fact that, you know, even whether you loved an album, you hated it, somewhere in between, you know, I know both of you give stuff a chance, right? And, you know, so many people, I think sometimes will be closed-minded. I ain't gonna listen to that genre, this genre, or whatever. There's no good music made today. You know, I hear that a lot. You know, we're reactions to the classics, but I think this list has proven there is just so much variety. There is so much music out there, right? So even if maybe something's not your flavor, like, you know, you can dig deep into something, you know, something else, another genre, and recognize that, hey, man, there's still, like, I listened to that Spoon record that made the list, and I was like, dang, this is really good. I'd only ever heard one of their albums before, and so there's a couple other albums, I think 2 others on here that I still need to get to, and so I'm looking forward to that, man, and the cool community you guys have built on here. So thanks again for having me on here, and you all want to see what we're doing over at Reactions to the Classics, man. We put up videos every single day from you know, album reviews. I think we have three of the 5 we talked today. We got full track by track album reviews. I reviewed Kid A with my 12-year-old sister back in the day. I don't know if I should have thrown her into the Radiohead pool like that, but she got through it, man, and she's a fan of the band today at the age of 16. So hey, it must have planted a seed, you know. But do live streams, you know, me and my dad over there holding it down, coming up on the 5-year anniversary. Crazy. But nice. Yeah, man. So always love connecting with people in the YouTube universe, so to speak, man. And so this was really a cool deal for me today. And you know, we'll have to do it again sometime, gentlemen, for sure.
Oh, 100%. I was actually going to say that, man. I absolutely want to, but yeah, this is, you know, once again, you know, to that point about the community, we couldn't do this without you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. We really, really appreciate all the support. You know, this really is, I think, a labor of love for both of us. And if we weren't as fans of music like we are, we wouldn't be doing this. So really, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for sticking with us all this time and sticking with us all the way to the end of this countdown. So once again, we'll just say, have yourself a good week, and until next time, we will see you later.
Peace.